if it's incompetence, it is of the highest incompetence that Victoria Police has probably seen in its history.
G'day everyone, welcome to the Bothy. I'm Chris.
G'day, I'm Al.
Today, mate, we've got a very special guest in the Bothy. Well, not in the Bothy, but via the Zoom in the Bothy. We're speaking to Scott Hanley, ex-Senior Constable with Victoria Police, where he worked for 20 years. He was a responding officer to the Dan Andrews car versus bike crash, but was called off just before he got there. Today, we get to ask him some questions that stand out to us and to you. Thanks to those that have sent in their questions. It's been really appreciated. How exciting is this, mate?
Yeah, very exciting, mate.
Cannot wait.
Yep. It's going to be great.
Should we jump in?
Yep.
Obviously, there's court action pending, so we don't want to jeopardise that case. And also there's the possibility of criminal charges still being laid. So having said that, we're going to shoot some questions at you, mate. And some of these are from our viewers. Some of them are from us. We'll see how we go. You right with that?
Yeah, go for it, mate. I'll do the best I can.
So first of all, the public reaction to the podcast has been incredible. I think over 100,000 downloads, a lot of feedback. Great news for Ryan and his family and for Rowan Jackson and yourself. Does it surprise you the amount of support or were you expecting this to be big news?
Look, firstly, like Raymond and Jackson have done an amazing job. And, you know, it was discussed early days. How do we sort of get this story out there? There's only so much you can sort of put on the internet or Facebook or YouTube or whatever. So Rowan came up with the idea of the podcast, and then look, it's been amazing. You know, like I didn't think we'd hit 100,000 in 4 days. Like it's pretty amazing, real.
Fantastic. Yeah.
But the way it's been produced and done has been by both of them. They've just done a fantastic job. They've kept it short, sharp and sweet. They didn't want people to be dragging on for hours and hours listening to me talk or someone else talk. So it's been put together well.
All right, let's take you back to the 7th of January, mate. Can you walk us through what transpired that day with yourself in regard to this incident?
Yeah. Look, we're talking, what is it, 12, 13 years ago. So basically on that day, I was a unit. I was working out of the Rosebud police station. So I was with two other police officers that day. We were down at Sereno. So just to put it in perspective, we were a general duties unit, but we're actually also being tasked by the Mornington Peninsula Shire to do jobs specific to issues that the Shire thought was warranted. And the reason for that is, and I'll explain it now for your listeners, is that sometimes in policing, I'll give an example. So the AFL pay for police, the Australian Open coming up, they pay for police response. It's not uncommon. So on that particular day, we were in a marked police car, but the lease for that car was being paid by the Mornington Peninsula Shire. So part of our job was to do emergency stuff if that warranted, but we're also tasked to do issues that were specific to the Shire. And I think pretty much on that day, I think the Portsea Polo might have been on. So we might have been doing liquor licensing or behavioural stuff. So on that day, that's what we're doing. So a bit of both. So it was I think it was around just after 1 o'clock, we got a call via 000, so via Intergraph, to go to an accident, which they call a 12 and 16, which is the code, which means a car accident with injuries. And that was pretty much all we got at that stage. It might have been mentioned that it was a child involved. I don't know if you know Sorrento, but we're at the bottom of the Sorrento Hill near the Cunha pub. Sorrento on that day is madly busy. It is horrendously busy. So we came up on the air and said, yep, we'll head to that job. So we activated the lights and sirens in the car and we started to make our way down to Ocean Beach Road. So from north to south, then we were going to turn left onto Melbourne Road and head down to Blairgowrie. By the time we got to the end of Ocean Beach Road, so that took us about 3 or 4 minutes because of the traffic, we'd been called off, I suppose is the best way to put it. Another unit from Rye came up on air and said, we'll take that job. And that was basically where our sort of involvement initially ended. People have often said, why didn't you go? And that's hence why I sort of explained it a little bit at the start, because we thought, okay, they're a primary general duties unit. We were split between general duties and doing something for the Shire. So we thought, okay, we'll sit back and we'll let them suss it out and see. And we were fully expecting to be called down there. There was no doubt in our mind we'll be going there at any tick of the clock. So we hung around Sereno and Portsea waiting.
Did you know the two officers that took the job? Did you know them at all? Or?
Yep.
Would you describe them as thorough and intelligent police officers?
Look, yes. Look, I know both of them. I did. I would have worked with them. I mean, you think about the roster of a police station at Rosebud, you're looking at 60 or 70 police. So, you're not seeing them, it's shift work. You're not seeing them every day. You work with people occasionally. I probably work with them maybe just a couple of times each, but no, they were both competent. There was no issues in them dealing with something like this.
Yeah. So in your 20 odd years as a police officer, had a job ever been taken from you like this before, or this was unusual?
It's unusual. And the reason I say that is that when you're putting aside being highway patrol, when your job is to go to accidents, general duties are not. Now, to go to an accident scene is probably one of the worst jobs in policing because you don't know. You could rock up there and be starting to pump out CPR, or you could be, I've done it where I've had to pick up body parts off the road. It's a horrible, horrible job. Yeah. To come up as a primary unit and be the lead unit. So if you're the first unit that gets there, you're in charge. You do the job and anything that comes with it, paperwork included. So it's unusual in the fact that it's all right to be the second or third unit there because you can avoid the responsibility that comes with it. But to be the primary unit is unusual. And it's unusual for us to go, yep, we'll go and you don't have to go, you can relax. That's strange.
So in Dr. Raymond Shuey's report, it states that Senior Constable Sage jumps the call that had already been allocated because she said she was closer, but he said that actually she was still at Rye Police Station where she would remain for another 6 minutes doing some sort of urgent correspondence. Was she finishing paperwork from another job, do you think? Is she corresponding with someone about what she's about to go to? I mean, how do you know?
Yeah, look, I mean, Ray's report, if you want to know what happened in this accident, read Ray's report because that's basically what happened. Before I answer your question, I want to say that Ray Shuey, I don't know if any of your viewers really know too much about him, but I'll just give you a tiny bio with the guy because it's pretty amazing. One, he was a Vietnam veteran, joined the police force in 1969 and rose from the bottom to the top. I think he was second in charge. He led the Assistant Commissioner of Road Policing, a bit like what Bob Hill does now, the equivalent of that. And if you look at when Ray was the Assistant Commissioner of Traffic, the road toll decrease, the legislation and procedures that Ray brought in saw a dramatic reduction in the road toll. He won the Australian of the Year by the federal government, the Senior Australian of the Year. He had a doctorate in road policing and even went to other European countries and implemented all their road safety programs. So an absolute champion of a man. And secondly, like his knowledge in road policing, there would be no one else close in Australia. So saying that and saying what we found out, obviously we've as part of the initial trial with Slater and Gordon, we subpoenaed a lot of documentation. So we got a lot of stuff through subpoenas and freedom of information. Obviously, if you look at the scheme, probably the distance-wise between us and where Shayna and the other police member were, probably the same sort of distance. We were obviously mobile. They weren't. They were inside the police station and they took, going by the Intergraph documentation we had, they took 8 minutes for them to leave the police station. Unusual because, I mean, theoretically, you don't have to put your gear on, you're wearing it. You might have to throw your vest back on. You've got the car keys attached to you. If it's coming up as an urgent job or a kid's been hit by a car, you get it going, you get there as quick as you can. Hence, for the reasons I explained just before, you just don't know what you're walking into. It's life and death. You could be there doing CPR. So that is unusual, yes. To answer you, long answer, but that's basically what it means.
Do you think they had any idea of who was at the scene before they got there, or do you think they were surprised when they rolled up on scene?
Look, I would say it's when they rolled up on scene. Look, again, I've been asked the question 1,000 times whether they've received some sort of phone call from someone higher. I don't know. I'd eat my hat, mate, if someone had the gall to ring 2 serving police officers and say, don't do this and don't do that. When we got the initial, so we got I don't think we had the MDT in our car, but then I'm not too sure, which is the computer terminal in your car. They might have. The information we were getting back was only on Intergraph. So it doesn't mention names. It doesn't mention, it's only vehicles. So it's not until you get to the scene and you sit there and you can punch in the rego of the car and you would see that it comes up as a Victorian government issued car. And I wouldn't be surprised if that rego's flagged on the internal computer system anyway. That if a police member checks it, someone in the town's going to know pretty quickly. I'd say all the government vehicles will be flagged on the Vic Roads database. But to answer your question, mate, look, I'd be absolutely shocked and horrified if that was the case. There's nothing I've seen to say I've found that said they've got a phone call from someone. I don't know, but if I said I could not believe it if someone had rang me in hire and said, Scott, don't PBT this guy or don't do that because this is, the future, premier or opposition leader at the time, I wouldn't have given a rat's.
The lack of the preliminary breath test, unusual. I mean, I know even when I get pulled over for something or Al gets pulled over, you get breath tested.
First thing.
Yeah, well, and look, and so just so also your viewers know that, I mean, I'm obviously an ex-police member. I've got two other ex-police members who were working on this as well, and we sat down and had a discussion. And one of the other ex-police members is Highway Patrol, so he is the guru of what goes on in these sort of things. But basically, it is like when you pull over a car and you're a police member and you do the PBT, the driver always does it. It's second nature. The PBT either sits in the door console or in the middle. Passenger does all the typing of the information onto the computer in the car, does the checks on the license or whatever, the rego, and the driver automatically. The first thing you do, it's like picking up a pencil or whatever. It just becomes muscle memory. You grab the PBT and you do it. I struggle to understand how they both thought each other and did it because the driver always does it. Always.
In the podcast, you mentioned that there's up to 35 breaches of regulation or procedure in the incident.
Yeah.
Why didn't IBAC investigate thoroughly? As Dan claimed that they were done, why did they only investigate one element?
Maybe their definition of thoroughly is a lot different to ours, mate. So I don't know. Yeah, look at the thoroughly aspect is. So here's what I think is, and I don't know. To be honest with you, I haven't listened fully to the podcast, but I can sort of roughly remember what I was saying. But Victorian Police, what happened is that they discovered, and I don't know how, they discovered that the PBT wasn't done. Whether that's someone who's at the accident scene saw it or I don't know, because Peter Muleman obviously only discovered via a phone call that it wasn't done. Now, the two police involved copped an internal smack for not doing it, and that means it's called a MIM file. So it comes down to local police level, and they get called into the boss's office, and they get a smack. Don't do that again, or it's they might get an internal admonishment. Blah, blah, blah. So I think that's what occurred on this stage. There was never anything. IBAC never came down and spoke to me, anyone else, any of the witnesses we've found and spoken to since. Never, ever, ever gone through and spoken to any of us about it. So I don't know how it's a thorough investigation. What we think they've done is they've reviewed the initial no PBT decision that was made at a station level, and then somehow worded it to the fact that, okay, well, this is just a full investigation. It wasn't. As you've seen in the list, there's 35. There's probably more. I mean, that's 35's being conservative of what we found. And we're talking about the day of the accident, and we're talking in the days after the accident. We're talking into the weeks after the accident. How any of this internal stuff was never picked up by anyone above them and then told them to go out and do this job properly also is mind-boggling. So it's not just the initial police response, it's the management who haven't picked it up. You got to remember, when they do an accident report and they sit there and punch it in like they did by the end of the shift, that then goes to a supervisor who reviews it and to see if they've done everything.
Right.
And you would have had a cardiac arrest if you saw this and said, hold on a sec. If Ryan dies within 28, you got to remember, you got 28 days. If you have a minor accident today and, you got a sore chest or whatever, and then 27 days later you rip your aorta and die because of it, it becomes a fatal. It goes on the road toll. So within 28 days following any accident, if one of the people involved in the accident dies, it becomes a fatal accident. And then major collision are meant to get involved. And they're going to tear shreds if they think, oh, hold on, where's all the evidence? Where's all the photos? Where's all the measurements? We're going to produce a report to the coroner now. Where all is it? Oh, we haven't got it. Sorry. It was a cluster of epic proportions.
So setting the preliminary breath test aside, what, in your opinion, was the biggest breach or break of regulation of those 35? Was there anything else that really stood out to you that was surprising?
Yeah, a lot of them stood out, to be honest, when we're going through and putting a list together. Oh, I mean, look, the no PBT is a big one. Also, just rudimentary stuff, it's pretty basic stuff. You go to an accident scene, again, when you go to these accident scenes, you've got to pretend it's a worst-case scenario and that Ryan's going to die. And look, there's a good chance he was going to anyway. If the air ambulance is called, the paramedics have made a decision that we can't get him by road. There's a chance he's going to die. He's got to go by air. So the paramedics make that call. So your police response then escalates to the maximum. You cordon it up, it becomes a crime scene. That's it. Measurements, photographs, everything gets done, speaking to witnesses and that. Because if he dies, and if the Highway Patrol or the MCIU, the Major Collision Investigation Common Unit, you can then hand them over everything you've got, and then they can continue from there. The follow-up afterwards, there's some internal police procedural stuff that wasn't followed. some of your listeners probably think, oh, that's minor. It's not. Internal documents that have to be done that allow this information to go up the chain. For example, I'll give you another example. So if an AFL footballer is arrested, there's a special document that gets created that goes up. So, that station commanders can see, that inspectors can see, that assistant commissioners can see, that the chief commissioner can see what's going on, and they can all comment on it. That was meant to be done. It was never done. When the police went and spoke to Ryan initially after the accident, when he got home from hospital, they didn't administer caution and rights. Like, that's what you do. If you're speaking to anyone about an alleged criminal offence, you give them, you're not obliged to say or do anything, but anything you've got to give them. None of that was done. So much stuff, procedural and internal stuff wasn't done. And it's strange that it was never picked up above the two initial police's pay grade. It should have been.
There were witnesses, obviously, to the incident after the incident occurred. Did some of those witnesses try and give statements to the police?
Yeah, they did. Well, one of the witnesses who was there, who lives on the corner and was basically Johnny on the spot, he spoke to the police up the day and was thinking that, okay, I've been ready to make a statement. I mean, he saw lots of things, and basically once the police left the scene, he's never spoken to him since. Jane Crittenden, who was the one who must have been a hair's breadth away from actually witnessing the accident take place. No police has ever even tried to speak to her. No one's rang and said, "Excuse me, Jane, can we get a statement off you?" Never happened. Again, if you go back to IBAC or Victoria Police, I mean, how thorough is that when you haven't even spoken to independent witnesses? Ryan's sister, who was at the scene then and there over the top of him, helping him out, who Kath Andrews called on Ryan's phone, was never spoken to by police. Again, I don't know how you call that thorough.
So we fast forward a decade and a couple of years, and now you find yourself on the other side of the fence, mate, investigating the incident. How's that all come about?
Look, mate, it's been a weird, and again, I use the word a lot. It's weird. Look, it all came out in the media, obviously, in the I think it's sort of maybe 2017. It sort of came out again, and I was watching it from the sidelines, but it was solely I think it was the Slater and Gordon when they were taking them to court in relation to the TAC payer. Another ex-police member, reached out on social media on a police veterans Facebook page and said, "Look, we're looking for people who might be able to help us here and might have some knowledge." And I said, well, I reached out to him and said, "Yeah, well, I remember I was initially given the job on the day," and it went from there. I left Victoria Police in 2018 because I was injured, so I've had some back surgeries, and then I thought I'd do some part-time sort of work and got my private investigator's license. So it all just sort of fell into place like that. And speaking to Peter Muirman is the most loveliest guy you'll ever meet. It's shocking the amount of crap he's copped on social media with grifting and all the rest of it. Yeah, well, look, it's horrible. It's horrible the social media stuff that people put on there, and from sitting in their living rooms and having a dig at the poor bloke or me or whatever. That's fine, but yeah, look, it's a bit of a redemption. Like, it always sort of sat in the back of my mind, knowing that I sort of was involved, and I spoke to Peter and said, look, I apologised to him a few months ago and said, mate, look, if we go and shit, we'll definitely go and do this job and do it right. Obviously we wouldn't all be sitting here today talking. It would have been done and dusted, but there's a little bit of guilt there, I suppose. But it's also mainly just if it was my kid that got hit by a bike and Victoria Police really didn't do anything to ascertain exactly what happened and how it happened, I wouldn't be very impressed either. And I challenge any of your listeners out there that if it was one of their kids and they got hit by a car, they would want a thorough investigation by Victoria Police, and that's all we're asking. It's not hard to do. Like, we're happy to hand over all the documents. It would be very, very easy and very, very simple. That's sort of the nutshell of why I'm involved.
Statements from the Andrews said that they were travelling at 10 kilometres an hour when they T-boned. When they got T-boned. But that's different to the paramedics report, the crash repairers report, and obviously Dr. Raymond Shuey's report. Why wasn't an investigation then done on, hang on, we got two sets of information here. Why wasn't there a further investigation done then?
Exactly. Well, the insurance document in relation to what they claim probably only came out through the Slater and Gordon stuff anyway, through subpoenaing that for that sort of matter. But saying that, I mean, the paramedics would have had a conversation with the attending police and say, I mean, you got to look at the nature of the injuries. Again, it goes back to if you're getting airlifted, you're going to die. That's pretty sick. You're pretty sick. And so the investigation response from any of that should have been at the maximum level, not the bare minimum. And that's what's happened in this case.
So that's really interesting. So within 35 minutes, they'd left the scene, the officers that had first shown up. And I think they took him to the air ambulance, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But they never went back to the scene. Is that unusual? And by that evening, the whole investigation was shut off.
Yeah, look, that's a pretty good question. It is unusual. And the reason I say that is because one of the other factors is when the air ambulance is called, they nearly always ask for another unit to go to where they're going to land. So, for example, if you're landing at the right footy ground, you need to get another unit down there to clear it so kids aren't kicking the footy when they've got a helicopter landing on top of them. So, and I've done it myself where helicopters have landed on a footy ground and you get them in the back of the car and ferry them to the actual accident location as well. So you always need other units down there to do it. I think I harp on it in the podcast about how busy Melbourne Road is at that time of the year. It is. I think it's like the population is like, Hobart. It's the busiest Woolworths rye in Australia during January. Like, it is just madness. So not even to have another unit down there directing traffic, because anyone, and I think Dan Andrews mentions this in his very brief short press release statement he made, is that he had a fear of have cars coming around the corner and running into the accident scene from where Ryan was laying on the road. So, and he's alleging he was standing up there directing traffic. So, because it's a busy road. So, not to have another police unit there doing that is definitely unusual.
Doesn't sound like he was standing on that corner, right? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but listening to the podcast, it looks like when they did the investigation on the phone call, there wasn't a lot of traffic noise in the background.
No,
that's interesting.
at all.
To give your viewers another bit of insight. So, when we had that professionally analysed that audio, where they sort of they can isolate Andrews' voice and they can isolate the intergraph call taker's voice. It is that accurate that they can actually hear people tapping keyboards 3 or 4 desks away, from when the call taker's speaking. Right. So to have zero audio, and look, I've been to Ridley Street. So if you stand, I don't live too far from it, but if you stand I couldn't hear myself think standing on the corner of Melbourne Road and Ridley Street. It wasn't until I was back, say, 250 metres further down Ridley Street. There's a slight rise and it goes down. That's when the noise drops really off. But you're 250 metres away from it. We've done some recreations there. We've done some media there with current affair and stuff. And you can't even set up there. It's just too loud. You can't hear yourself think. So your viewers can put 2 and 2 together and think what I think about that.
Dr. Raymond Shuey, in his report, states that it does not demonstrate competent professional practice from Victoria Police. How often do you hear things like that said about investigations? Is this a standalone in its incompetency, or is there something more sinister?
That's another awesome question, mate. It is, if it's incompetence, it is of the highest incompetence that Victoria Police has probably seen in its history. So I suppose that's probably the best way I could word that. Look. This. I think when we had a conversation over the phone, Chris. There's obviously stuff we can't talk about due to what's planned for ahead, and that there's other stuff there that will all come out in the wash. What I will say is, none of this is going away. I mean, it's going to keep on building and building and building. And again, it doesn't take much for Victoria Police to get behind this. And look, it needs it. The amount of people that listening to the podcast and the amount of people who support it. If Victoria Police had the integrity that I hope they have, they would go, "Yep, let's do it. We'll have a look at it." And whatever conclusion they were drawn to, or they come out of it, okay, fine. We've done what we're here for, and they've made the decision. That's all good. But at least have an in-depth look at it. I mean, it's not that challenging, really.
What's been the one element that surprised you the most about this whole case, mate, across the 13 years? What's the one thing that's jumped out and caught you off guard or surprised you?
Caught me off guard.
Or surprised you, yeah.
Look, that's another great question. Look, I would say that the constant spokesperson from both IBAC and Victoria Police saying it was thoroughly investigated. Look, it's again, and look, Ray's report was fantastic and thorough and explains exactly what to go on. But having people say that it was thoroughly investigated, The problem with IBAC is their legislation, which is probably rightly, is very tight. There's nothing we can subpoena from IBAC to say they've done a comprehensive report into it. They could say they fly to the moon tomorrow and we're just got to take their word for it because they're not obligated to provide any proof whatsoever. So They can say whatever they want, and we just got to believe them. If they have, release it, show us. And if they haven't, they've done a comprehensive report. Again, we'll take it on board and go, yep, okay, that's fine. But none of that's been done. It's apparent. If you don't speak to witnesses, independent witnesses, how is that thorough? That's not thorough at all.
It's a joke. What's next, mate? What happens next? What can the viewers expect to see in a month or two or whatever it is?
It's all happening behind the scenes. Don't worry. Look, so as I think I've mentioned in the podcast, it's a private prosecution. So we want Victoria Police to, obviously, we'll give everything we've managed to put together, and hopefully we'll have a sit down with the new Chief Commissioner and say, this is what we're after, and we'll see where he goes from there. The other thing is that we've done a what's called a hand-up brief of evidence in relation to pervert the course of justice and perjury. We think that warrants the Office of OPP to look at it. We think there's enough there. So that brief of evidence will be given to the OPP, and ultimately the way the legislation sits with that is that it's up to them. They will make the decision on whether it goes any further. So it will be totally out of our hands, but we will give them everything we've got and our recommendations, and we'll see what the OPP wants to do.
Sorry.
No. Obviously, the defamation stuff's all sitting. The defamation and the criminal stuff are obviously two separate things, and they're running parallel with each other. It just depends on obviously a lot of different factors, but rest assured that there's a lot more out there that we know, and then and stuff that we just can't produce. Even since the podcast come out, we've had people message us and give us more information. So it's continually evolving. I think I'm having a sit down with someone in the city later this week who wants to give me some information. So it just continues to evolve.
Well, kudos to you, mate. Keep working at it. And you've got all of Victoria and most of Australia behind you, mate. That's for sure. And same with Ryan and Peter. I mean, everybody wants to see justice for Ryan. That's what it's really about at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's what it's about. Absolutely. He deserves it. He's been through enough, the poor kid. So let's hope so.
Exactly. All right, mate, we'll wrap it up there. Thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it, and our viewers will appreciate it. Can't say thank you enough, mate. Cheers.
So there you go, everyone. Our chat with Scott Hanley. Thank you very much to Scott and the Bikeboy team for allowing us to do that interview.
Yeah, that was great.
What did you think?
Yeah. An absolute travesty of justice.
It is, mate. It just shows you it's either at an incredible amount of incompetency or something else is afoot here.
Yeah.
We all think
something else is afoot here.
We do. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Whether the investigators believe that or not, I don't know. But you and I
think you'd have to be blind not to see something dodgy going on, right?
Exactly right. And that was great for us to hear a lot of the points a little bit more in depth than were brought out in the podcast. And we got some answers to some of the questions that we wanted.
Yeah.
And he was so giving with his time.
Yeah.
And explained things, really carefully. And there's some stuff in there I didn't know. I didn't know that sometimes the Shire pays for police vehicles to be on the road. And
I did not know that at all.
No. All that was put. And, of course, the policy and procedures or regulations that weren't followed on the day and after.
Just insane, mate. The amount of shit that should have been done that was just completely
ignored, forgotten.
Yeah.
Down to everyone keeps coming back to the breath test, but there's no way an officer would get out of their car without a pen. Yep. So why would they get out of the car without?
Like you said, it's what they do. They get out of the car. It's just like, they go straight to it.
Yep.
Not this time.
No. Scott said that he didn't think they had a phone call beforehand, and we'll take his word as gospel. Maybe they weren't tipped off. So I don't understand how all this has come about.
Yeah. Well, maybe they're both Labour supporters. Who knows?
But to be honest, mate, if I'd have walked onto that scene then, I wouldn't have known who he was.
In 2013.
He wasn't even.
I think you might have seen him on TV.
I wouldn't have.
No,
I wouldn't have known. I wasn't as interested then. And they were relatively young officers, but maybe, like you said, they've gone and checked the rego. Then you get an understanding of who this person might be, who that car's registered to, obviously registered to the government. But even the fact that they haven't put the report in that goes up the chain.
But somebody up the chain has ignored it also and try to fob it off.
Exactly right. Whoever's received that report hasn't followed the back up with the officers. Yeah. They were really lucky that Ryan survived.
Oh, I know.
Because otherwise it would have been far worse.
Yeah, I just can't believe how many things they missed.
Yeah.
35 things.
And that's why I think he makes the point. It's either the worst case of incompetency ever or
something else.
Something else.
Mm.
Yeah. And you and I believe
something else.
it's something else. Mm. Yeah. Maybe that's the conspiracy theorist, but I don't think so.
Yeah. No, I don't either.
No. Let us know what you think, everybody. We're really interested in your feedback. It was terrific for Scott to give up so much of his time.
Appreciate that, Scott.
And thanks to the Bikeboy team for setting that up for us. And as he said, there's much more to come. There's some stuff they just can't say.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see where this goes, mate. Because it feels like justice is
mate, I'm super excited, mate. Very excited.
Yep. Exactly right.
Definitely.
All right, everyone, let us know what you think.
All right, thanks, guys. See you later.
See ya.